Hi everyone, I know it's been a really long time since I've done a video about supply teaching in London, but better late than never. So I had a couple, well, I don't have very many subscribers, but I had one woman who asked me, she wanted me to make a video about what is it like to live on a supply teacher salary. So I wanted to talk about that, what it was like for me, and of course my experience would be much different than someone else's, but all I can talk about is my experience. So she asked, what is it like to live on a supply teacher's salary, and also are there living costs that people from other countries wouldn't expect? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and what it was like for me. Yeah, I think I mentioned in the previous video that when I was a supply teacher in London, I made about £135 per day. So of course after taxes and everything, after every week I would get around £500. Now for me, what my expenses, my main expense was rent. I lived in a house with 5 other girls, and for my room, remember I lived it was about 2 years ago when I was still living in that house. It's been quite some time since I've been living there. Actually right now I'm in Thailand. I'm traveling a little bit. I can discuss that in another video, but right now I'll just focus on my experience. So yes, I lived in a room in the house, and it cost me £550 per month. And I would say I lived in an area called Bounds Green, so that's in North London. I would say that's actually pretty good considering the prices in London are very high for rent. So yes, my main expense was rent. For food, I would say I spent, well, food, it really depends on you. Like I could go, it depends where you go shopping. They have many different grocery stores in London. I had one of the lower cost grocery stores is called Morrison's, but because sometimes I was so tired after school, I would just go to the Sainsbury Express or Tesco Express, and that would cost me a little more. So it really depends on you when it comes to food, but let's just ballpark it and say maybe 100 or even sometimes more per week on food. So now we're looking at £650 already. Now I was lucky because all of the extra bills like electricity and water, everything was included, internet was included, so my $550 included everything. And I actually found, I found my room through a company called Arrive Homes. It was helpful because they're a company where they helped other teachers live together, so it was nice. I lived with all teachers. I lived with actually a friend from home, so it was quite nice to have that set up. So some other expenses that a really big expense for me was going on holiday. I love to travel, and a lot of the time I would go and travel to different countries in Europe. I mean, all of the time. I think there was a period of time when I was doing supply work where I would travel every 2 weeks. This is not a joke. You could find really cheap flights through some of the budget airlines, and I would just check Skyscanner. I would do a check, and sometimes I would just go to the cheapest place. At times there were flights to Germany for only £20, which is ridiculously cheap. So I would be traveling all the time, but I'll be clear. When I traveled all the time, I definitely was not saving money. There was a period of time where I was actually in a little bit of debt. It wasn't something that I felt I would never get out of, and I wouldn't recommend that to anyone, but it did allow me to have the experience to travel all of the time. Now, I think I went to the extreme because I really traveled all the time, and I also made sure that I was saving money for 1 month in the summer to travel. Now, if you don't want to travel all the time and you're paying for rent, and of course, oh, another thing I forgot about is transportation. So if you're taking the tube, if you are doing supply work, you will be taking the tube all of the time. Now, there are different passes you can get. So you could get a pass where it's for different zones. Like, for example, if you're getting called into work for zones 1 to 3, then maybe that would cost you something like a ballpark. It might be different now, maybe around £37 per week. But it really depends on the zones and how many different areas you're being called into for supply work. With my company, they never really, well, they said they wouldn't send me somewhere that is more than an hour away, but sometimes it was like an hour and 20 minutes. Sometimes it was a little further than expected, so of course you're spending a little more money. So yeah, so to look at it, so we're talking rent, food, the tube, those are all very, well, those were all of the factors that contributed to me spending the most money, and of course travel. But yes, is it possible to travel? Absolutely. And of course, if you book things in advance too, you can find better deals. You can go to Airbnb. If you're traveling with someone, you can split the cost of well, it depends if you're in a hostel room or if you're in a Airbnb or a hotel. So those are all different factors. What I used to do, I liked, well, when I was doing supply work, a lot of the time I would travel by myself, and I would stay in cheap hostels. I mean, now it's a little different. Now I stay more in hotels, but at that time, yeah, I would just make it cheap and I would have a great time. But no, I did not save money. I did not save money because I was traveling all the time. If you're someone and your main focus is to save, to be honest with you, I don't know if teaching in London would be your best bet. Maybe I'll make another video about how I just taught in Korea for 1 year. Teaching in Korea for 1 year, you can definitely save money, but in London, things are expensive. Food can be pricey, rent is expensive, the tube is expensive. And that's not to say, oh, you shouldn't teach there, because I think it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. But you know, you have to weigh out your options and the pros and cons, what's most important to you. If you're there to have a lot of experiences, to travel, to meet new people, then definitely I would say go for it. If you're there simply just to save money, I would say maybe you should choose somewhere else. And also, someone asked me, are there any unexpected costs? The only unexpected one I would say is how expensive the tube can be, because if you're spending about £37 maybe per week to take the tube, that can add up quite a bit. And another one you might not realize is how expensive rent can be. And also, when I was looking for a place to live, it was quite difficult because you're looking at these, I was looking at different houses and a lot of them didn't seem very nice, but they were still very expensive. So what I would suggest is, if you're planning to move to London to do supply teaching, if you can, maybe stay in a hostel, Airbnb. If you know someone, stay with a friend before. Do not confirm your housing before you arrive in London, because you may be very disappointed when you get there. That's just what I would say about that, because so many times you'll see pictures on the internet and when you arrive it looks completely different to what you thought it would be like. So I mean, everyone it doesn't feel as comfortable doing it that way, but that's just my experience. That's what I did and it worked out in the end. So yeah, I'll wrap up this video here. In the next video, maybe I can talk about, well, if any of you have more things that you would want me to share or just to give some information about, just you could comment below. I'll try and do my best. And if anyone wants to know about teaching in Korea as well, I can help you out with that. Another video I'd like to make is about traveling and my experiences, where I went to, where I traveled to, some of my favorite spots. If you would like me to talk about that as well, I can do that. All right, until next time, bye.